Hello. You are listening to the Carroll Connection with your host, Jared Carroll.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Carroll Connection. I am your host, Jared Carroll, here to bring you guys another great episode. I did want to take a chance to shout out last week's episode 83, Childhood Friendships, featuring Andrew Brown, Jake Wickham. First time they've been on the podcast since Andrew was episode 32 and Jake was episode 14. Jake was on the Quarantine Connection, my mini series did during the beginning of the pandemic, which is kind of fucking crazy because we're still in the pandemic. But they came on, we talked about the importance of childhood friendships and pretty much how that affects your mental health. And we compared it to children today and how they're very isolated and the differences that we've noticed. And we had some funny jokes and stuff in there. So it was a really great conversation. But you can check that out, thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. So for today, for episode 84, I'm bringing in Brittany Brackett.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Appreciate you for coming out here, and have to give a shout out to Brandon. He kind of helped link this up, and you also know Lizzie Fournier, who was on episode 77. You guys danced together, so great to have that connection. I mean, Carroll Connection, as you guys can see. So pretty excited to do this. Kind of let everyone know who you are and what you're doing currently.
Yeah. So hi everyone. My name is Brittany. Again, you guys can feel free to call me Britt. I always stumble over my words when I say that. I'm a couples photographer. I am currently trying to book more weddings with that. I actually just had a job interview last week to hopefully be getting into some second shooting for weddings next year. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, that's actually really exciting. And we'll dive into a little bit of that later in the podcast too, when we get to kind of like your career and things that you're working on towards the future. Like I mentioned, the beginning part of the podcast, we focus on family dynamic, kind of like upbringing and all that stuff. And I think that paints a really great picture for the audience on where you're coming from. And it kind of like allows us to build off of, because obviously I don't think either one of us are famous individuals yet. But it'd be funny if one day we're verified, we get the blue check and we're looking at this. But it allows people to just get some insight. So whatever you're comfortable with, please share.
Yeah, of course. So where do I start? Because everything's kind of like hectic with my life. I grew up with a single mother. She had me as a teen mom. So it was just me and her. We bumped around here and there, like moving and whatnot. She had a boyfriend who like I consider my stepdad now. They never got married. Things kind of went into a hiatus in high school where they broke up, but like he's still in my life, thankfully. And I guess I can talk more about the whole hiatus that happened because that was like a big impact on me. But I'm an only child, so yeah, it was just me and my mom. I had a close relationship with my grandparents growing up because, like I said, she was a teen mom. So trying to balance work and being a young mom, I'd always be like spending time with my grandparents when they babysat me. Yeah,
shout out, kudos to your mom for raising an amazing individual. Like that's props to her, and obviously grandparents. It takes like they always say, it takes a village to raise a child.
Of course.
So that I like the fact that we can have the conversation too, and you're vulnerable enough to talk about these things. And have you ever heard of the only child syndrome?
Yes, but like I don't really know exactly what it is. And also forgot to mention, how stupid of me, my stepdad, so to say, he does have a son. So like I did kind of have like a sibling relationship, but where things went into a hiatus and like they're not really in my life anymore. It's like now I'm back to an only child. Yeah.
So the kind of the syndrome essentially is that not like you're spoiled, but your parents would do everything for you essentially and all that jazz. Did you ever come into like maybe some conflict, maybe when you started to make friends that you didn't have, I'm trying to think of the word, that maybe that connection, like a sibling connection? Because I know at least for me, my relationships with my brothers were the first relationships that I had before really going into school and things like that. So did you notice any differences maybe early on, if you could remember it all?
Not really. I feel like if anything, it just kind of helped me be more independent, like as a person now.
No, and that makes sense. If you're comfortable, I would like to dive into that hiatus too, and like kind of like how that affected you.
Of course.
Growing up.
So where do I begin with it? So sophomore year of high school, it was like after school, I was just home after like watching TV, whatever, before I started on homework. I had a cop show up at my front door knocking on the door and was like, oh, like, is your mom here? And I was like, no, she's at work. He's like, okay, well, you need to call her. An hour or so later, she came home and we were told we had to pack as much as we could and get out of the house. My mom's boyfriend had put a restraining order on her. It was kind of like a huge thing where she suffers from drug addiction, like prescription meds and stuff like that. So like I had no idea. Like she was a functioning addict is what you would call it. Like she worked every day. She was able to provide for me as a mom and everything. Like I had no idea. So at that point, like things were sporadic, but she was like still stable enough to know that like she wasn't in a good situation to care for me anymore. So she gave me to my grandparents to kind of watch me as things went on with that.
At what age did you go to your grandparents?
My sophomore year of high school.
Okay, so that's a pretty traumatic event to experience at that age, because you're like coming of age, like you're entering your teenage years, pretty crucial years to be honest. Like especially at that pivotal point too. Like sophomore year is kind of like the turning point when you're gearing up. I don't know if it's the SATs that year or the junior year.
It was like the PSATs.
Yeah, so like everything's starting to roll into that. So to have such a traumatic event happen in your life that early on, I mean, I can only imagine like your mental health at that point.
Yeah, yeah. I have no words to describe it. It was just crazy.
Did you struggle at all during school during that time?
High school a little bit, but I feel like more so in college, that's when things really started to like get worse, because it's like balancing the workload that college brings while also like trying to work part-time and then deal with all of that going on too. Like that's when things started getting worse mentally for me.
Yeah, I would expect, as a human being, like I can only try to put myself in your shoes, like to a degree, and like try to experience like those emotions, and like I would probably fail at a lot of the things. So I mean, as props to you for being able to try to hold yourself together, to work, to do all those things, because it's not easy. It's not easy to deal with all the traumas of life, to experience all these different things, and to like keep like a positive like front almost, and like try to push through those things.
Right.
Did that affect any of like your friendships and things like that at that time? Because I know it's hard. I mean, high school is drama filled. I mean, for all of us. I mean, we went to different schools, obviously. So like, I could probably picture it's probably similar atmosphere for the most part.
Yeah, and so I went to vocational high school. So my shop was cosmetology, and it's all girls. So of course, there's plenty of drama.
So that definitely was. Your friendships were definitely impacted in that atmosphere and that experience. Turning a little bit, one of the main things that I've seen from your page and what you've talked about, to me at least, is dance.
Yeah.
So at what age did you begin dancing?
Of course. I started dancing when I was 2.5 years old, and that was when I took my first class. I mean, it wasn't really much of dancing, but, you know, I took ballet, tap, the basics, and that's just, like, something that I've always loved growing up. My mom tried putting me in other things like gymnastics and stuff like that, but it was like, no, this isn't it, and so I'd always go back to dance. I danced all throughout elementary school, middle school, most of high school until that whole hiatus happened, and then I had to stop dancing because my grandparents couldn't afford to keep me in class anymore. When I went to college, I was actually on the hip-hop team there, so I was able to get back into it a little bit. But things with my mental health were just, like, too much, and I had to take a step back from that. But now I go to an adult dance class at Motion with Lizzie Fournier every week, and that's a lot of fun.
Shout out Lizzie. She had a fantastic episode for you guys that haven't listened. Episode 77, go check that out. She's an amazing person, and her Instagram, fantastic. And I think it's always important, too, that as we're growing up, that we have these experiences, whether it is something like dance or I played football, that was kind of like my thing, or whether it's track or playing music or doing something with other children, because it teaches you so much. Was there any like specific life lessons that you could have maybe picked out when you were starting out early on that kind of helped you kind of develop as you were growing up? Tough question, but
yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I guess just like the friendships that you make, like being in that atmosphere, like you, like, I guess like you just become so like close with them, like you're seen with them every week, multiple times a day, sometimes every week. So like they become almost like family to you. So like you'll have them to rely on, like when stuff, I don't know, is bothering you or whatnot, and you can just like count on them as better friends than just like your classmates.
No, and that makes sense, because I definitely felt like that with football a lot of the time. Was like, it was always kind of like my outlet to express myself. And obviously I learned as a functioning adult, that's not always the best way to express your emotions. And I think a lot of people, I always laugh when I hear people say like the gym is my therapy. I'm like, it can be a form of therapy. It can be therapeutic, but it is not therapy. Therapy is therapy. Like, there's a reason it's called therapy. I'm not saying the gym can't be therapeutic or it can't be your quote unquote therapy, but it still is not therapy. Because for me, working out too is therapeutic, and it definitely helps me. And I'd encourage anyone that is struggling mentally to maybe go for a walk, to try those things. But regardless, the bonds that I would make through football are lifelong. I mean, last week, episode 83 with my cousin Jake and Andrew, played football with them most of my childhood. So those relationships, and it's funny that you mentioned like the friendships, because that's all what last week was about, was building those friendships, those childhood friendships, and like actually nurturing them and respecting them and allowing them to grow with you.
Of course.
Because we do lose contact with people as we grow up. That's just the way life goes. We take different paths and all that stuff. But when you keep your childhood friends, there's a lot of tenure with that. There's a lot of experience with those friends. And so, I mean, it can be difficult sometimes because as you grow as a person, sometimes your life beliefs are going to be different from them. But the fact that you have those friendships that can carry on are super valuable and should be like taken seriously. And I think that was actually one of the quotes that I posted this week, was pretty much something along the lines of value the friendships. And if they are real ones, like take them seriously, because most people don't like take care of their actual relationships with their friends, and they just think that their friends are always going to be there, and that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
So I think that's an important aspect to hit on. Did you feel like when you couldn't dance anymore, like that was gonna like, or did it negatively affect like your mental health at the time?
Definitely, like, because I've lost connections with a lot of those friends, which, I mean, like, part of it's on my end, because, like, yeah, I probably should have reached out more to, like, stay in contact with them, but, like, at the same time, I had so much going on that, like, it was just kind of, like, put on the back burner. I was more focused about, like, my well-being and, like, my mom's well-being and, like, still being successful in everything that I was doing, so.
And that makes a lot of sense to me, that while you're going through that, you're going to be struggling in those things, and it definitely, I can imagine it definitely was kind of, whether it's heartbreaking or disappointing that you're experiencing, that you're losing something that you found value in.
Right.
So was there, I think you mentioned too before off the podcast, was there other sports that you could play that kind of like was able to supplement that a little bit? So
not during that whole time, but like before everything happened, yes. Let me list everything that I've tried. I've done gymnastics, I've done cheerleading, I've done horseback riding, I've done figure skating. I did tennis camp one summer, was not a fan of that. I played basketball my freshman year of high school, was not good at that. I scored 1 point my whole season, wasn't for me, but dance was everything for me.
And that, I mean, it definitely shows, especially like you guys have to check out her Instagram, like fantastic video quality and all that stuff too, and fantastic dancing. Like, it obviously shows in your dance that you do value that, and you enjoy it. I mean, it's very obvious to me, and like as someone who looks at passion, who looks at things that people are doing, I look for that in other people, especially who I want to come onto the podcast and people who I want to talk to, because a lot of us do struggle with finding things that we're passionate about. So to talk to someone who has a passion with something, or for something, I should say, it's genuine to have that conversation. And it's good for the people who do listen to hear that, and like maybe they get something, maybe they don't, but like I'm getting something because I hear you talk about the way you talk about it. I mean, it clearly is something that you're super passionate about.
Yeah. I think the great thing with dance too is like, yeah, you're being physical and like you're able to like move your body, but like at the same time it's a form of art, so like you get to express yourself. So like even now going to these adult dance classes every week, like I'll just be able to bring whatever stress it is that week that I'm dealing with, and I just put it into that dance and I express myself through it, and it's just like a stress relief for me for that week.
Yeah, and that makes sense too. Like I think we all look for that. Like for me, it's podcasting. Podcasting is like the time where I can kind of just like let stuff out, kind of just relax, just let shit be. And it's something that I kind of stumbled upon it, I should say, like, because I wasn't the most vocal person. I wasn't always like the talker, like, and I was put in uncomfortable situations, which made me really like reflect on my own like being, to kind of experience. I don't really contribute anything to society. Obviously, I'm working and I had my job at the time, but when I was in a toxic work environment, I was in a place that I was really uncomfortable. I lived in Georgia and Texas for a little bit, and when I was in those places, when I felt really lonely and I felt kind of lost, I had to kind of look around and kind of just think, is this really what I want to do? Is this something that I really enjoy doing? And that's when it kind of started coming to me, like, what do I like doing? And I like talking to people. I like having legitimate conversations. And as those conversations were kind of going on in my head, I was like I mentioned, I love Joe Rogan. I love like podcasts in general. I was like, I could do something like that. Yeah. And out of that, I birthed kind of the Carroll Connection. Now we're entering year 3, and now we're able to have a conversation and like record it, and like people can listen. And now I'm introducing the video, and like everything is happening in a certain like time pattern. And I think kind of like my own personal view on it is like, we always want to like push for the better things. We want the biggest and brightest future, and we want it right now a lot of the times.
Right.
And that's not how life works.
No.
And how I've kind of been able to like roll with that is to like to sit with the things that are uncomfortable, to be patient, to like be grateful for what you do have. Like, I'm super grateful that I'm able to have a conversation with you and record it and gather information about where you come from in life, and to learn about you and like be able to share that on a platform. Like, right. That's something to be grateful for, because like, how many people do you know like sit across from someone who they don't know, like, and have open, honest communication? I mean, I was talking to you before about all my like my heartbreak stuff and relationship problems. Like, to sit down and like talk to someone like openly like that, you don't really find that too often.
Right.
So I'm in the midst of trying to create this space, I should say, where we could talk about our passions, our mental health, be positive. And I've even had people openly like cry on the podcast and get emotional, because what the conversations that we're having are like pretty in depth and like pretty, how I should say this, authentic. Right. And it makes me feel like, I'm not glad that they're crying, but like it's like cool that they feel comfortable enough and vulnerable enough to do that on a podcast. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And I want to take a turn into kind of your reasons, because so you're going through high school and you're gearing up towards like your senior year of high school. What's kind of going through your mind? Are you dancing at that point, or are you no longer dancing?
No, I wasn't dancing at that time.
You're working a lot, you're going through all the stresses of trying to pick college. Like, is college on your mind at that time? Like, what, like, kind of like what's going on right there?
Yeah. So growing up, college for me, it was like no questions asked. Like, I was going to college. That's just how I was raised. With my mom having me as a teen mom, she didn't get the opportunity to go to college. Like, she got a little bit of the experience, but she was like, I want you to like live on campus. I want you to have the full experience. So that was always drilled into my head. I was like, I'm going. At the time, I thought I was going to college for business to open my own hair salon, because, like I said, I went to vocational high school for cosmetology. Well, halfway through college, I decided that wasn't it anymore and switched into photography. So, but yeah, college was no questions asked. I was going. Yeah,
and I think that's one of the things I've had a lot of conversations about with a lot of people is, because I think it's an important conversation to bring up, because especially at the ages that we're all at and the people that I've had the conversations with, it's kind of forced almost. Mm-hmm. Like, there is like no alternative sometimes when they kind of roll out the college pamphlets and all that shit. Mm-hmm. And it's frustrating that they don't like have these conversations with like their students, like the schools, I'm saying, because yeah, they'll have like the military personnel and stuff like that, but they don't talk about trades. They don't talk about none of that stuff. I mean, you said you went to a vocational school. Kind of talk to me a little bit about that experience, because that's a pretty interesting experience. Because like I'm coming from a public school,
yeah,
so
of course,
that's different.
So I went to Old Colony Regional Vocational Technical High School. It's in Rochester, Massachusetts. Originally, I wanted to go to Bristol, Plymouth for dental assisting. Don't ask me why. It was just something that I was like, hey, I could probably make a good living doing dental assisting. But my paperwork didn't end up getting transferred to the right school, and it went to Old Colony. So I was like, all right, whatever. Like I guess I'll go there. It was a cool experience. So like every 2 weeks you would go into your academic classes. So you do your math, science, English, all the basic core curriculum. Then the next 2 weeks you would go into your shop. So you would do, I don't know, whatever it is that you're doing. So for me it was cosmetology. We had culinary, automotive, carpentry, CAD drafting. There was a bunch. I don't remember them all, but so like by the time your senior year rolls around, you have the option of going out on co-op. So instead of those 2 weeks showing up to shop, you could go out and work in the field for those 2 weeks and get paid. And then the following 2 weeks, you'd come back into high school and do your normal classes.
Okay. Never usually do this, but I'm gonna take a pause on the podcast because I want to check something on the podcast. So pause break for you guys, and we'll get right back into it. Back at it. Sorry, guys. So I had some technical difficulties. Never usually happens in the podcast. Sounds a lot better in my headset, too, so should be good. We were just talking about vocational schools and, like, your experience with that.
Yeah.
So that experience, it sounds very interesting. And I think you were mentioning, too, or a little bit earlier, the cosmetology aspect of it. Was what you were, like, thinking towards, like, mostly?
Yeah. I definitely, I thought that's what I wanted to do, because, I don't know, I've just always been a creative person, and that was, something that I felt like I enjoyed doing with my life. And then after graduating high school, I graduated with my cosmetology license, so I was working in a salon. I got some experience with it, and I was just like, this isn't it. I need to find something else.
Yeah, did you just not enjoy it, or was it maybe the atmosphere a little bit?
I think it was the atmosphere. So I feel like if I had started at maybe a more mom and pop type salon, I probably would have stuck with it more. I ended up working at Mastercut, so the walk-in, at the mall, get a haircut type thing. And it just wasn't it for me. I didn't have as much continued education as I was promised when I was hired there. Which I feel like I probably would have gotten that more so with a more experienced stylist at a smaller salon. And just the types of people I was dealing with on a daily basis, it was more so the general public, where I was you don't know who's going to walk in the door type thing.
Yeah, no, and I want to give you credit too, because I think a lot of us don't have the guts to be yo, this is not for me, because I was in that position and it was super uncomfortable.
Yep.
It was not an easy decision to make, and I had a lot of doubt and a pushback from other people too on the outside.
Right.
So, I want to give you kudos for that too. Just to have the self-awareness to be yo, this is just not for me.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's really hard. So, you go through that. You're looking at college. I know you said it was kind of pushed. Did you go into it knowing what major you wanted to, or you kind of just I'm just going to go and figure it out after the fact?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to go for business, because I figured worst case scenario, if I didn't end up having a salon, you can literally do anything with business. So that's that's what I had my mindset on.
Yeah, how was that experience? So that was kind of your reason was to because you can do a lot with business, so there's a lot of things you could go with. So that was kind of your reasoning. And then how was that experience going to school?
Yeah, it was chaotic because of everything going on with my personal life and stuff like that. So juggling that aspect was a lot. I wouldn't say I did the best in college, but I got myself through it. So that was the big thing with me was I have a goal of getting my degree. It's going to happen one way or another. It's going to happen. And I did it.
In college, is that where you started to get back into dance at this point?
Yes, it is.
So let's talk about that experience.
Yeah. So my freshman year of college, I had known that Bridgewater State, that's where I went, had a dance team. I was intimidated to try out for it. That's what Lizzie was on when she went to Bridgewater. I was intimidated because I had taken some years off of dance. I was yeah, I'm rusty. I probably will never make it on the team. But they did have a hip-hop team, so I was okay, I don't really need as much flexibility or technical skills to try out for this, I guess. So I'll go for it. I tried out, didn't make the team, was a little discouraged by it, but I was whatever, it's my first year in college. I'll just take this time to get adjusted and focus on my first year of school. tried out for the hip hop team my sophomore year at college, got on the team, and yeah, I made a lot of friends that way.
That is like, I'm trying to think of the word I'm trying to think of. Damn, I lost it. I lost it. But to do that to college I think is super important to have, like, because some people do the fraternities and all that stuff and the sororities to build a little network for yourself to kind of thrive and to grow with. And especially something like dance where you're did you guys, was it like competing with any schools and things like that?
Yeah, so we did a couple of competitions the year that I was on the team. We were supposed to go to nationals down in Florida, but we didn't have enough in our fundraising funds to go, so that didn't happen, which I was bummed about, but it's okay because I still got the experience of being on the team and performing at like basketball games and our homecoming events and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's a good experience to be able to have, though, and to compete. I mean, everyone loves competition at the end of the day. I think it's healthy to have competition in your life because we're always obviously competing against ourselves, but to be able to compete against individuals and doing it something that you actually enjoy doing, that's super fucking valuable. Like, I can't say enough about the competition aspect of it. So as you're going through school, you begin to obviously look at life post college.
Yep.
Kind of like what's going through the mind. How old are you currently?
I'm 23. I'll be 24 in
So
January.
you're recently pretty much graduate.
Yeah.
So were you still in school during the beginning of the pandemic then?
So halfway through my senior year is when everything shut down. So we
Let's talk about that.
we left for spring break, and everyone was excited because they were like, yeah, we're not going to come back for an extra week. We're going to like disinfect the building or whatever, and then we'll be back. So everyone's like, yeah, it's an extra week of spring break. And then we got another email that week and we're like, yeah, we're not going back to school at all. So everything was done remotely online. And I mean, it was like a win-lose situation because I feel like it was better for my mental health in a way. Like, I don't know, it's more laid back. Like, I just wake up, log in online, and go to class, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it was hectic, but I got through it.
Yeah, I would say you definitely lucked out in the sense that it happened just for that one semester essentially, because. Man, the fact that it's still impacting people now, and like even to go to universities that you're required to get vaccinations. And I'm fully vaxxed, but I definitely border on the line where I think it should be choice, and it is frustrating to see that that's where we go, but that's the way things go. So I'd say that you're lucky to have gotten away with just what you experience, because I think it was the following year when a lot of that stuff was like pretty much remote, and like I started taking some online classes and stuff, but that was always my choice. To be forced to take an online class, like I could see a lot of people like failing and falling off because it's pretty draining. Yeah,
definitely. I think it takes a lot of more like self-discipline to like make yourself do an online class too. Like, you don't have your professor standing in front of you being like, okay, yeah, like your exams on this day or whatever. Like, yeah, you'll have that online still. They'll email you, but like, I don't know. I guess some people like they don't tend to check their emails often, and like so, like I said, it takes a lot of self-discipline to like be like, okay, when's my exam?
Yeah, because I enjoyed it because like I liked being able to go at my own pace, but like damn, like because I know some people that like hated online classes, and to be forced to do something like that, I can only imagine. And even like going down to like the younger grade, like high school, middle school, elementary, like props to like the teachers that did actually do something. Like, so I know there was a lot of talk too about teachers who didn't do a lot of stuff, and like the teaching was kind of lackadaisical. And I had Brandon on; he even talked about some of his experience working through the pandemic and stuff like that. Episode 50, check it out, because I know Brandon will listen to this. But I want to kind of transition now as you're graduating school, you're looking at everything that's going on, and you mentioned photography. Yeah. So how did you get into photography?
Yeah. So like I said before, I'm a very creative person. I always have been. And that's something that my grandmother kind of like, I don't know, I guess brought more so to my attention. Like in middle school and whatnot, I'd come home and like procrastinate so bad from homework. I'd sit on my computer and like edit videos and like go outside, take photos and stuff like that. So like I guess I've always had an interest in it, but I never really saw the potential in like making a career out of it. So one day my grandmother was like, oh, like Brittany, you really should like try to find something that you can do like something. She's like, I don't know what, but like just something within that aspect. So I was like, all right, yeah. And I started like brainstorming more about it. Thought I wanted to get into doing wedding videos and videography and stuff like that. So my grandmother was ever so kind enough to buy me my first like real camera. Had my camera, found a mutual friend who was getting married that summer and offered to shoot her wedding completely free because I had no idea what I was doing. Watched a few YouTube videos. Was like, all right, well, we're just going to go and try it and see how this works. Went and did it, and I was like, okay, yeah, this isn't it, because I didn't realize how much went into the videos of, like, music choice and just literally everything. It was a lot. But now I had this nice new camera, and sure enough, I started, like, picking it back up like I was in middle school, taking photos of everything and anything. Started posting some on my Instagram. Friends started reaching out to me, being like, hey, like, can you take some photos for me? And I was like, yeah, sure. And eventually started getting inquiries from couples, and now that's more so of like what I've found to enjoy is like capturing the love between two people.
Yeah, and definitely check out her photography page. It'll be tagged in all the posts. But I've always had a love for photography. I always have an appreciation for it. I've always just loved taking pictures. Like if there was a passion that I would do next, I would probably lean into photography. Like I like being an outdoorsy person. I like going kayaking. I like hiking. I like being out in nature.
Yeah.
That's the photography that I would lean into just because that's what I enjoy. But I had, like, I guess my first professional photo shoot in 2020. Shout out Callie. She had started her own photography, and to have someone capture probably my best photos I've ever seen of myself taken.
Yep.
Like it's a huge credit to photographers, and like you literally make people confident. You literally make people feel beautiful, like or handsome, whatever whoever is you're taking pictures of. Like, and like you mentioned, you're capturing for you love of couples and like sharing that, and like I can imagine that's like very rewarding for you.
No, yeah, definitely. I love capturing like more of like the in-between moments and stuff. So like with my photo sessions and stuff, I won't like pose you and be like, okay, look at me and smile. Like I'll have you guys interacting with each other, and like it's more of like a fun date night basically is how I put it. So like I'm just more of a fly on a wall capturing those moments for you.
I really like that. Like that's like the best way to get the most genuine pictures too. Yeah. I feel like is because I'm corny like that in the sense of like I like the what's the word? Like when you're taking pictures, candid. Is it candid?
Yeah,
I think it's
candid.
Yeah, it's like candid, and it's like more like realistic, and like you. That's when you get really good pictures. Like,
yeah, if
someone ever asked me to take a picture, even with like an iPhone, like I'll just be like taking pictures, like the whole time, because half the time the pictures you're taking in between those moments are the really good ones, because like you said, it's like that's the real stuff.
Yeah,
you don't like pose photos are great and all that stuff. Like everyone can do them, but it's that being able to capture those moments that are like super like real and like in real time.
Yeah.
That's what separates, in my opinion, like the photographers from like kind of like amateurs, is being able to capture those moments.
Right.
So kind of talk to me a little bit about with photography, how that's kind of become obviously between dance and photography, and if dance is more of like the passion for you, like kind of how that's really become your passion through all the times that you've been able to do these photo shoots, or if it is dance, we can change into that. But for you, like what has like been like the turning point was like, this is something I really, really enjoy doing?
Yeah. I don't know, like I guess just like the feedback that I get from like the clients that I work with, like as soon as I deliver their photos, like they'll message me and they're like, oh my God, like these are amazing. Like, thank you so much. And like, I guess like just knowing that I was able to serve them in a way that they can look back on those photos for the many years to come and like relive that moment. It's just like, it ignites something inside of me that like makes me feel special that I like was able to be a part of that.
Yeah. Right there, what you said too. I was actually typing up, like I posted something when I got the whole backdrop and stuff this week on Instagram, and like one of the last things I said was find the thing that lights your soul. And for me, it's been having a podcast, to have conversations. Like I've continually put money into it, and like that's when you start to know what kind of like your passion is, when you're willing to put your time and money into it. Right. Because it's one thing like if you're just putting your time in and like you're just like casually taking stuff, whether it's like, we'll use photography, for example, you're just taking stuff on your iPhone or your Android, or whatever, you're just taking pictures casually because you enjoy it.
Right.
But to take that step and be like, I'm going to get a camera and I'm going to invest my own money into it, because to earn that money, obviously you have to work for it and all that stuff. So you're really putting in a lot towards that. So like for me, when I did the podcast, when I first was coming up with this experience, and I talk about it a lot because it's something that I've gone through, to have, if you look at the Instagram on Jared M. Carroll, my page, the last picture on like the most recent post is in my bedroom, dinner tray, microphone on the box itself, and like talking into it for my intro episode. And I hope I make it big one day so I can look back on that and be like, yo, that's literally where it started. It was just like a USB microphone just plugged into in my room, like a basement of my parents' house, like still in the basement of this podcast, but like just sitting in my room having like trying to think of what my podcast is going to be about. Like haven't done a single episode, recording an intro, like have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about, but like passionate enough to like put myself out there. And this is another big reason why I want to get you on the podcast, is because you post you post content, you post yourself on social media. You're a very positive person on social media, and that is not easy within itself.
Yep.
So I would love it for you to talk about how you kind of had to, because we all do it, to kind of overcome that barrier of posting on social media and being vulnerable. Because like when I read your what's the captions? I don't know why I was thinking descriptions. I'm like, that's not the word. Like captions, like you're actually putting thought into these things, and like I love that. So like kind of like talk to me a little bit about that experience and how you've gone about that.
Of course. I just think it's like very important to stay authentic to yourself. And I feel like with that, you're able to connect more with people, especially like through a screen. Like I'm not sitting face to face with you. You're just reading about me. I don't want to be fake. I don't want to be like, this is my life. And it's so grand, like, cause it's not. So I like to be more vulnerable and post the more authentic things online for people to see, because it's not all that great.
No, and I feel the exact same way when I post stuff. Is like, and if any of you guys know, my TikTok content is like the sad emotional relationship shit, but I used it as when I first like was posting that stuff. Like you don't post that shit on Instagram, you're gonna get clowned on,
right?
And I mean, I still got clowned on it anyways, but like I had all these negative emotions and I had nowhere to go with them. And at the time I wasn't in therapy and I didn't have all the coping tools that I have today.
Right.
But I had TikTok and I just saw other people doing it, and I put my thoughts into words, and I don't do anything fancy. I just sit there like kind of stone faced and just have a quote and like play the sad music behind it. And like a lot of people related to it, and a lot of people were like, I feel that too. And I had so many messages from so many people that were like, thank you for putting my thoughts into words, or thank you for making me feel like I'm not alone in this feeling.
Right.
And that was what a lot of people didn't see, was the fact that people related to my sadness and like it helped them.
Right.
Like I can't tell you how many messages that like I received, and still to this day I get from people like, thank you for posting what you posted. Like I needed that. It helped me at that time, and I appreciate those people for even saying that, because that wasn't the goal of it. The goal was to like post for myself and like get the stuff that's inside of me out.
Right.
And when you have people that relate to it and that appreciate it and like support you in that aspect, like it's everything. So like when I read your post, or the captions I should say, or see the videos that you post with dance, or look at your photography page, like you could tell that you actually care. And I think a lot of people are missing that, especially in like today's society. Social media is so toxic. Like it's kind of sad to see the way people look at social media.
Right.
And how I always say it, like social media is a resume, whether you want to accept it or not. Like you could put out your best self all the time, but like I'd rather just put out myself all the time.
Right.
Not just my best self, because like you mentioned, like you're not always going to feel your best.
Yeah.
So that the whole thing with social media too, and you could chime in on this. It's honestly, because like it definitely impacts your mental health negatively a lot of the time, but having a support system on social media has like helped my mental health. I don't know if you've been able to like reach out with different people or content creators essentially and like kind of gain maybe some confidence or some advice from them.
Yeah.
Like have you kind of connected with anyone on social media that's helped you kind of take that step for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So I actually, like, when I first started, not first started, but when I was fairly new in photography, I still am fairly new, I invested in a mentorship with a photographer out in Oklahoma. So it's more of like how to run your photography business. So like, yeah, I have the education in business, but this is more so of like step by step how to have a successful photography business. And with that, I was put into like a Facebook group with other people who had done the mentorship with her as well. So I've like made a lot of, I guess, friends, you can say, through social media as that. And just like having support from them, and like they're going through like similar things that I am as far as like marketing myself out there and like whatnot. Like, so they know the struggles that I'm struggling with, but like they give me that extra push of like encouragement and like, no, like keep going, like you got it, like just fight through it.
Yeah, and that's how I always feel. Even like I talk to Brandon or shout out to Eli. I haven't talked to Jocelyn in a little bit, who's been on the podcast, and they have their own podcast.
Yeah.
Shout out to all of them collectively. But I root for them and I try to like all their posts and like things like that nature and like support that type of stuff because I'm not competing with them. I'm not trying to take viewers from them or any podcaster. Like, I support the people that want to do it because it's not easy to do a podcast. It's not easy to be a photographer. It's not easy to be a dancer. Like, and then to post content on top of that.
Yeah.
People don't understand the process of like content creating. Like, it takes a lot of time, and I know, especially for photography, just editing your photos, that is a fucking process.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
It takes so many hours to get the right filter and all that stuff. Like, how long does it take you on average, maybe for like a couple's photo shoot?
So depending, like usually I'll tell my clients it takes me anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. I give myself like an extra gap week just in case something happens. Yeah. But normally, like, I'm an overachiever, so I'll try and get it out within 2 weeks just to make them more happy and excited that they're getting their photos sooner than they were promised.
That's crazy because it's a long process. Like, kudos to you, like, seriously. And again, I'm going to tag her in all that stuff, so you guys could definitely, if you're in a relationship, check her out, because I am not in a relationship, so unfortunately I cannot use your services like that. But because do you do other shoots, or specifically it's more been just couples?
Specifically couples. I have done other shoots in the past. Like, I've tried doing families and stuff like that, and it's just one of those things where I'm like, yeah, it's not for me. Like, I can't, like, I love children, but like to an extent, like when they're having a temper tantrum in the middle of the photo session and I'm doing everything in my power to get them to smile and they just won't, it's like, okay, I'd rather deal with a couple that's more fun and like interacting with each other and easier to work with.
No, that makes a ton of fucking sense. Like, it's just, you're dealing with two adults, like, unless you're polyamorous, I mean, it could be multiple, but like, you got to be inclusive nowadays. But I could definitely see that being a lot more easier on the mental health. Definitely. To not stress that. And it's good to know too that you have your niche. Like, you know what your audience is, and you know what you're looking to do. Because I think when you're creating content of any sort, one of the hardest things to do is figure out what is your niche. Yeah. Because for me, like, I had no fucking idea of like what I was going to talk about, who I was going to try to talk to. Like, it was a tough hill to climb, and then it kind of came back to like the overarching of mental health. I mentioned it through almost every single episode. I try to, at least, and to center the conversations around that, because it's something that we all go through. We all go through different struggles in life, whether it could be physical, spiritual, or mental. Yeah. And to kind of express that in a platform like this, I think I'm doing a service not only myself, but to others. And I think that's the overall message, is when you're trying to offer good to the world rather than bad. Right. And I think that's a positive experience. I want to turn a little bit into dance and the content creating behind its motion, correct? Yes. So kind of, how did you end up there?
Yeah, so motion was actually my studio growing up as a child. So as soon as they started offering the adult classes, I was like, I am going right back there. I was very excited for it. So that's how I kind of started going back.
Started going there, and I started seeing more with Lizzie, because I met Lizzie first. Yeah. The content being posted, the videography aspect of it, kind of talked to me through like an average session. Like, when you're seeing all this content creating, you're seeing all the lights going through. Yeah. Like, I love the fact that like I have all the lights in the podcast and like you're just so unfazed, and like I love that. So like obviously through experience that you've experienced like this type of atmosphere. So kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I guess for someone who's never experienced it, walking in, you're probably a little intimidated. I know I was, even like being experienced in a studio setting. But like now that I go every week, obviously I'm more comfortable with it. But yeah, they switch off on who teaches the classes every week. So they'll usually offer 2 classes that'll alternate between contemporary style or hip hop. Sometimes it's jazz and hip hop. They switch it up, so it's always new. And the choreography, that also changes every week. We have an awesome videographer who comes in every week. His name's Derek Taylor. Shout out Tune TV.
Shout him out.
He comes in every week, so we'll learn for 45 minutes the first dance or whatever. We'll learn that. We'll practice it a few times. We'll split up into groups, do it a few times, and then we do it in like our recording groups. And Derek will film us as a group, and then we have the option to do a solo if we want to for extra. And then we'll switch classes, and we'll do the same process all over again.
That's awesome. Like, I love the content, the music choices, everything, the lights, like the editing, like when I see those videos pop up, I'm like, yo, this shit's lit. Like, cause I'm pretty sure I mentioned earlier, just like when you have a really good videographer, it takes things to a whole different level. Like, I mean, it's like the stuff you see on TikTok or YouTube, and it's like, I wish I could do that. And then you actually are doing that. It's right. Like, yo, this is kind of fucking sick.
Yeah.
Like, I want to, as we're getting to the later part of the podcast, I want to focus specifically on the mental health aspect of dance. And like, because I think I talked a little bit with Lizzie about this, like the dance mom's point of view is like what people think of sometimes when they think of dance studios and stuff like that. It's not always necessarily like that.
No.
So kind of talk to me about your mental health and like how you've used dance to kind of like, as it seems like it's kind of like a therapeutic experience to kind of just move your body and to kind of, because they always talk about expressing yourself through your movements and things like that. So kind of talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
So it's definitely a way for you to express yourself. Like I was saying before, like I like to go there. I like to bring all my stress that I have that week and just let it all out on the dance floor. Some weeks I can relate to the songs that we're dancing to. Other times I don't, but like it's okay because I just still listen to like, I guess, the sound of the music that's being played and find a way to relate to it in that sense. But yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the music has, because like it's they're both together to make the experience. So like obviously you could dance without music, I mean duh, but like having the emotions tied behind the music, definitely I could see how it paints like a way for you to kind of like express yourself. You're creating art essentially, so with just like dance movements and in your body. Like it's honestly really impressive. Like you guys are gonna have to check it out. We're definitely getting on the back end of the podcast. So I have one more question for you, which is tied to passions. But is there anything else that we didn't talk about on the podcast that you wanted to just mention or say beforehand?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, cool. So, Brittany, the last question I have for you is, what would your advice be to someone who wants to pursue their passion?
Go for it. You can literally do anything you put your mind to. There's no doubt about it. Like, whatever you're struggling with, whether it's mental problems, personal problems, relationship problems, whatever it is, like, don't let that stop you. If you have something that's ignited inside of you and your mind is telling you that you need to go do it, do it. You might fail, but, like, at least you tried. You might find something different outside of that like, that led you to. Like, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, whether it's good or bad. The bad things might suck, but like that was supposed to lead you to a different path and like teach you lessons that'll bring you to a better one.
100% agree with that. I'm a firm believer in that everything happens for a reason, and sometimes you don't know the reason right away, but it all makes sense later on. You just got to keep going and doing what you're doing, and I think what you're doing is really fantastic and really great. And I just want to say I appreciate you for coming on this podcast and talking about your life experience. And you guys are going to have to check out her obviously her personal Instagram as well as her photography Instagram. And I'll be tagging that both in the podcast. But thank you again.
Thank you very much for having me.
No problem. So for you guys, if you guys like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your family, share with your grandma. You can check it out at thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. Peace.